Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Hysab podcast, episode 3. The topic for today is how can banks become financial advisors and improve the financial well-being of customers. Today, with me, I have an esteemed guest, as someone who's very experienced not only in the local digital scene, but also like he has a lot of experience working for organizations such as IFC, which is a World Bank affiliated organization. He has worked for tons of global banks in global capacity, and he's also worked for startups. He has worked for digital banks, so I can keep going on and on, but I would like to introduce Shahryar Ali Shah, who is the Chief Digital Officer at Askari Bank, and I've seen him in the news related to some digital bank as well, so we'll be discussing a lot of interesting things. So welcome, Shahryar, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Yasir, for that kind introduction.
So Shahryar, before we get into the interesting discussions that we'll have, I would really like to share, because I'm personally impressed with your experience, and I think you're one of those people who bring a lot of experience to the table in Pakistan, and I personally think you're an asset to the country, right? So I would like to touch on your experience a little bit, global, your experience with IFC, with the digital bank, with the startup, just like a very brief introduction about it.
So first of all, you're being too kind. I'm one of many very experienced digital people in Pakistan and globally. So in that hierarchy, I think I'm fairly low. But I've been very lucky by being at the right place at the right time. And I started my digital journey essentially with ABN AMRO when I managed the alternate delivery channels, which was a precursor to digital banking. And from there, I spent 10 years with ABN AMRO in different geographies. I got to do a bit of risk, a bit of business, a bit of alternate delivery channels, so to set the stage. And then I had the opportunity to work with DBS Bank in Singapore, which really got me into the start of a digital revolution. And DBS Bank is now considered one of the world's, if not the world's best digital bank as a commercial bank. And I was lucky to be a part of the team there, of the innovation team, which fed into the digital bank. From there, I moved to GIB in Bahrain, where one of the most amazing digital banks called MEAN was set up by the Gulf International Bank. And I was part of that as the Chief Innovation Officer for the bank, as well as the Chief Operating Officer, double-hatted. And it was the first, let's say, Sharia-compliant digital bank in the world. Fully app-based. The entire journey was digital, except for the last mile where the Saudi Monetary Authority wanted a wet signature. So we opened kiosks and small branches just to complete the last mile of the customer onboarding journey. After that, I was lucky enough to be a part of an AI machine learning startup in Singapore called IDA, which does tremendous work in the AI and machine learning field in the insurance tech and fintech verticals. So in the FI and the health and insurance sectors. And work with some remarkable people, Dr. Shanali, Dr. Tan Gyokneng, amazing experts in their fields. From there, I moved to the IFC and got to work with the digital financial services vertical as a consultant, and helped banks in Southeast Asia move from commercial banking to digital banking. These were in-house digital banking units like ours in Askari Bank that were spun off as standalone digital banks. And from there, I was offered an opportunity to come in and pretty much reboot digital banking at Askari Bank. And Pakistan is at that stage right now where it's in takeoff mode as far as financial technology, agri-technology, edu-technology, edtech, insurtech, fintech. So we basically had this opportunity, and that's what got me to Askari Bank.
Yeah, so I'm very sure that the audience who are listening to you right now, they must have enjoyed the whole experience. And now, as you've said that we are at the takeoff mode, at the stage. So let's start by understanding what are the banks in Pakistan doing for the financial well-being of the customers? Because as you said, the movement is from the physical to digital side, but I think for a long time we'll be phygital. So there'll be a physical aspect to it, there'll be a digital aspect to it. So as we stand today, not only Askari, but all the banks in general, what are we doing for the financial well-being of our customers?
So I think that's a really good question, and there are two parts to this, two answers to this. The first one pertains to people who are banked, currently banked. And for them, the idea, and I love the word phygital because that's really what it is. There is this last mile, which is the customer touch point. And no matter how, digital you get, there always is a need for a physical interaction to get cash or some kind of human contact with a machine or with an individual is very important for us as consumers. So the one part is the bank customers, and for the bank customers, our objective is to make their day-to-day interaction with the bank, with our machines, with our apps, with our websites, as frictionless as possible. So that whole CS, UX, the customer experience, the user experience, the customer journey becomes very important in that. The second part is the unbanked. And that's, for me, is a bigger challenge and a more interesting thing, which is to bring into the banking fold people who are currently not banked. And the reason they're not banked in many cases is because of geography. So not proximity to bank branches, fear of the unknown. So, they don't think that they belong in a bank. They think they will not be treated well. They don't have enough money. They don't have the skill set, the knowledge, and so on and so forth. So what digital banking does is, it's sort of, to borrow a phrase from one of our partner banks called DBank, we want to democratize banking. Yeah.
By the way, congratulations on that.
Thank you. You're referring to, of course, our investment in DBank, which we are partnering with Sequoia Capital, Kleiner Perkins, and Nubank, which is the world's biggest digital bank, and with DBank, which is run by Tanya Idris and Khurram Jamali. And I think that the reason we invested in that is because they share our ethos of bringing the unbanked into the banking sector. And I think that allows for more transparency, more controls and compliance, and helping them once you enter the banking stream. Not only are you placing your deposits and doing your transactions through the banking stream, but you're also then giving yourself access to funding and lending. So be it small ticket items, salary advance loans, agricultural loans, education loans, personal need loans like marriage, education. So all these things become very interesting sort of elements of digital banking. So the bank making it easier for those that are currently banking with us, let's say our brick and mortar or digital customers, and making their life easier, making their interaction smooth and effortless. And the second one is the onboarding of customers who are not currently banked. So this combination is really what we're doing.
So that's a very good answer. But when I think of the reality, do you think that the banks in Pakistan, in reality, because one is that you can do innovation, you can do digitization, all the tools and all the ideas are available there. But do you think that the decision makers at the banks are actually giving importance to the financial well-being of the customer rather than just taking it as a business that they're doing? So the interest in the well-being of the end user.
So there's always a sort of a fine line between, as a bank, you are a commercial organization. So you do want to do things that are commercially viable. But banks also have a social responsibility. But what we've seen in digital banking across the globe, and the few instances that I've worked in digital banks in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, is that by bringing more people into the fold, you actually then are increasing the pie. And in that pie, you are adding more customers that you can lend to, that can transact, that give you fee income and interest income. So the only difference is it may not be a very short gestation period, maybe a longer gestation period to get them up that curve, but it's still happening. So to answer your question, I think the fact that there are so many people who are entering the banking stream, and there's so many banks trying to bring them in, shows that there is a real desire among the senior leadership in banks, right? Just the fact that almost every bank has a chief digital officer now. To that end, we are also trying to find a way to monetize this, right? So I think the State Bank of Pakistan has helped a lot by creating the infrastructure that we need for digital onboarding of customers. Okay. And then on top of that, the fact that we can monetize it makes it even more interesting.
Yeah. So because like you talked about the commercial angle of the banks, and we have to live with that fact that at the end of the day, these banks are commercial organizations like any other retail company, right? So their vested interest will always be in the bottom line of the banks and how they are doing. And the projects and the initiatives that they pursue would be in line with those interests as well. So speaking of that, there's a big opportunity for commercial banks. So like let's say if I take the same point that you have talked about, which is digitization and financial inclusion, then there's a new generation that's coming up, which is Gen Z and millennials. And they are looking for, they're not looking for the same kind of solutions that the older generation was looking for. They're seeing banks more as, something which they already have as a partner with them. They are the financial advisor, if you will, for them. So how do you think that the banks can become, apart from financial well-being of the underserved, if I see this segment is not actually, they are underserved, but in a way that these are the potential market that are already ready to embrace any such solution, right? So how do you think adoption has been by the Gen Z and millennials, and how do you think that the banks can, from this early age of theirs, can focus on this group of customers, which are the Gen Zs and the millennials, and help them, become financially more successful?
So I think that's something that there's been a lag between the needs of the Gen Zs and millennials and the banks, because banks traditionally have tried to take what they have and then push it through digital channels to this new generation. This generation is very savvy. They're the Instagrammers, the Snapchatters, the Facebookers. I think even Facebook is passé now. I believe they've even moved on from there, right? So that instant gratification, instant connection, that social media, underpinnings of instant networking is where banks have traditionally lagged. So as this lag becomes less and less, this deficit is closed, right? We are going to see an uptick in these guys becoming banked. Because I think traditionally, and as you pointed out rightly, that banks tend to go towards people that make money for them today, not those that are going to make money for them in the future. But having said that, if you look at, Auntie Anne or young Susie or somebody, they are using Instagram to basically decide on sell their products.
Yeah.
And unless we make them our merchants and billers and enable them on our apps and websites, we will miss out on that entire thing. So that's happening at our level, and then it's happening at a more base level with people like OneLink, the switching company, right? The tech company that underpins this, to say we will provide you the platform to allow people sitting at home to become merchants, to become sellers, right? To become e-commerce partners. So I think that you're absolutely right. We are seeing that gap narrowing a little bit, and we are seeing a little bit of that there's been a lag, right? So you see banks trying to catch up now to say, okay, let me be sure, for example, for us in our voice and virtual centers, which used to be called the call centers, we have social media as a connector, right? Banks are onboarding customer using WhatsApp, for example. So we are trying to now reach millennials and Gen Zs and Gen Ys through the means that they use on a daily basis, as opposed to the means that we already have, right? We've made the investment. Now we're going to push it for you. No.
Yeah,
They said, we don't want the investments you've made. We don't care because they're not geared for us. So that outside in approach is now starting to, and I'm
absolutely.
seeing it across all the banks in Pakistan.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I think like you have just nailed this point that it's no more about what kind of investment you have made. It is what they are looking for. So when you are saying they are looking for that, in a way, it translates
Absolutely.
into customer experience, right? So it's no more the front end. It's no more the services that you're offering. It is the holistic experience
Correct.
that you're offering to the customer. So, speaking of the customer experience and working with you, because I would like to share with our audience that now Hysab Kytab is available on Askari app
Correct.
as a personal financial management solution provider. And working with Sharia is walk in a rose garden, right? So he has been very, focused on the customer experience and the omni-channel approach that Sharia have been pushing for, and other things that we have discussed. So why, do you think, and this is more for everyone knows that customer experience is important, but for our audience to benefit from your experience and your input on that, why do you think that customer experience is the past, present, and
I think
future?
so. I mean, customer experience, like I said, has always been at the heart of everything banks do. Even brick and mortar, you figured out the customer journey was a physical journey. You walk in, you step here, you meet somebody, a meet and greeter receives you, they take care of your needs, and RM does something for you, or teller does something for you. The experience is a physical one. What happens in the cyber, on the ether, and in the apps and the digital spaces, you translate that into a digital journey. And the digital journey must take into account similar things, but it's more about clicks and screens. So the flow. If you're used to a vertical
Yeah,
flow, in everything you do,
yeah,
then that should be the way you should bank as well, right? So
absolutely,
every door
absolutely.
that you open, every path that you take in a digital banking journey should be reflective of what you do in your other apps that you use on a daily. Because the phone has become central. For Askari Bank, our digital customers are almost 500,000. These customers are 90% of them use our app. Okay, 10% are
Absolutely.
on the
Absolutely. That's
internet and the website. So
very
we
true.
have to enhance. We have to. What happens with banks and with us as well is that we make stuff that we think customers will want and we push it out. But now what we're doing is, in the last few months, is we've said no. Let's do an outside in approach. What does the customer want? Who is our customer first of all, right? And how
That's
do we
very
make
important.
it easy for them to conduct their
Yeah,
transactions? If you go to an ATM, for
yeah,
example, or you call our call center, voice and virtual, or you go to our app or website, you should first have the same experience. Number one. Then, whatever you do most should turn up first. So you don't want to
yeah,
go, travel 200 miles to go do something that we know you're going to do in the first place. And that's where all the AI and machine learning stuff comes in. Yeah? That's very key.
yeah,
So those are the kind of, that's why customer journey is important. If you look at a store like Carrefour, for example, they put a lot of energy and science behind the stuff that they put near the checkout counters, right? So there's a
absolutely.
story about diapers and beer, for example, right? So it's stuff that people
Yeah,
forget when they're shopping, and it's the last thing you see before
yeah,
you leave. Say, oh wow, I forgot the diapers and I had to get some beer. I'm talking about abroad.
yeah,
Here it would be different
yeah.
things. So that whole
It'll
it's
be
a
bread
very
and milk.
retail driven journey, which started with
It
retail
is.
stores, then went to banks, and now is digitized.
It is. And you have rightly said so, because I was listening to, not because it's Steve Jobs who said that, because I was listening to Steve Jobs lately, and I really liked one thing. Someone asked him a question about, the product that he's developing and all that. It was something to do with phasing of Java and, what technologies he was working on. And he very smartly said that we are a company which has now started we are focusing on what the customer is looking for, and then we are developing the technology to support that, rather than developing something and finding customers who basically would like that, or asking customer to change their
Correct.
ways. So having discussed that, because I personally know that you're doing some amazing stuff at Askari. and I won't be surprised if very soon if we start seeing Askari into one of the especially from the customer experience perspective in the digital space, something of that people might be referring to, and this is my personal feeling, knowing you and things that you're doing. So, what are the like for the audience to understand? What are for the financial well-being? Now we are putting customer experience aside. We are saying that for the financial well-being of your end customers, what are the steps you have taken so far? What are the steps you are planning? You think are important for Askari to you basically take on, and what is the bigger goal that you're trying to achieve? Because I know that you're working on many things. So just for the audience to
So I think
understand.
one of them, directly involves you and your company, is to provide customers the ability. Right now, it's a very static relationship. It's a very sort of a flat relationship and very transactional. Okay, you come in, pay your bills, draw your
Sure.
cash, deposit cash, pay your utility bill, school fees, credit card. So the idea is for you, us partnering with Hysab Kytab, for example, is to allow people the ability to manage their financial well-being. And what does that mean, really? What that means, it starts by knowledge, right? So knowing, even in philosophy, they say, you know your environment before you know yourself. Where are you standing? Who's around you? The sense of, direction and path. And is someone crossing your path, or are you walking straight or sideways? First, you have to get your bearings. It's very important for customers also to get that bearing. And when they get their bearings, for example, they have to know because when you're spending, or you're transacting, it's very difficult to keep track unless you're keeping a ledger on the side. Very difficult. So what PFM does and what your company does very well is to allow the customer to get a 360 view of their monthly transactions, the interaction with the bank, right? So I spent so much on my credit card. I spent so much on bills. I did so much of this. I put in money for this. So that's the historical side of it, the first part. So awareness of who you are and what you do. So, and I'm very bad at that personally. So trust me, I think this is awesome that I'll be able to have some help because I really suck at it. So when you say, because bankers make, they say doctors make the worst patients. So same philosophy applies to bankers, some bankers. So the idea is to first get a 360 view of what you've done in the past. Based on that, you can drill down further to say, hey, in my credit card, what is my expense? Am I spending more on fuel? Am I spending more on groceries, movies? Am I just coffee? Am I going nuts on food? What am I doing? The second part is, based on that, what financial goals do I have? And the idea and what we're working at Askari Bank is to say, if these are my financial goals, right, what do I need to get there? How much do I need to save every month or every week or every day to reach my target? This could be an education target. It could be a recreation target. I want to go on a trip. I want to go to Turkey. I want to go to France. I want to go to Dubai. I want to go to, Uzbekistan. Whatever it is, you set goals, savings goals, investment goals, saving goals. Where the bank comes in, interestingly, is once you've helped us provide that information to the customer, if there's a shortfall in that, is where we come in and say, guys, okay, you have this target that you set for yourself, but being Shariar Ali Shah, you will not meet your financial goal because you spend money on, whatever you like, right? So here is where the bank can come in and give you a loan, and you are pre-approved for that loan, for example. So those are the kind of things that we hope in the future, inshallah, and we're working on it, to provide that gapping, to close the gap between your goals and your reality. Because nobody is perfect, right? Nobody is able to always save enough. So we will help with that run rate, monitor that run rate. And when we find that gap, the bank can come in and say, guys, look, you're close, but you're not there. And you wanted to go in July, but so here's what we can do for you. Okay. So that's the general philosophy behind it.
No, I think it's beautifully put together. This point better than what I could ever do. And the reason is because what you have said is that if I summarize the steps taken or the important steps that banks should be focusing on, I from what you have said, I'm picking up two important points that it's important for banks. Number one, to know their customer
Yeah.
so that they can help them,
Correct.
and it is important for customers
Yeah.
to let their banks know about their aspirations,
Correct.
about what they want to do, so that banks can step in at the right time and guide you in achieving those
Absolutely.
objectives.
Absolutely.
So technologies could be PFM, could be some other thing, but the principle is this, that the banks who are able to understand their customer better, they will be able to do better business.
Absolutely.
And the banks that are not able to understand, and likewise the ownership also lies on the part of customer as
Yeah.
well. So, for example, if you're providing PFM as a tool, those customers of yours, the 500,000 customers that you've talked about who are on the digital space, those who engage more with Askari will benefit more from this,
Absolutely.
because they would let Askari know that this is the area, and there's sometimes there are blind spots for the customers, so they don't know that there could be help in. For example, you gave the example of fuel. So if I am using my Askari card to pay fuel and my PFM is noticing it, it could be that Askari might step in to say, like, we do have a fuel card which offers
There you go.
5% cash
There you
back,
go.
so why don't you subscribe to that? Similarly, if I'm paying, say, like a 50,000 rupees in rent, 50,000 I'm saving for my house, building a house, then Askari can step in and say that why don't you subscribe to a mortgage which is going to be 100,000 rupees and can save you some money. So I think that's very interesting. Now, Sharia, the reason why I asked you to share your experience was because I think, very few people have such vast experience, and especially working for global organizations like IFC, working for banks who are the leading banks in the digital space, and also investing into the bank, which is going to be the digital bank, which is the DBank, right? So, now, because there are a lot of, people who listens to our, podcast, and there'll be some, young, folks out there, some people who are on the digital banking, they are also handling the digital banking in their respective banks, and they would love to get some insights on what are the things that as advice, what would you like to say to these CDOs or the wanting to become CDOs?
My advice to my colleagues, and many of whom know much more than I do, is to keep the customer central to whatever you do. So that's where you start. And the customer, there are two levels of customers. One is the external customer to the bank, the ones you're trying to onboard. The second are the stakeholders inside the bank, the SME, retail, transactional banking, corporate banking, consumer banking customers, the businesses themselves, because they're the ones that you're doing this for. So the role of a CDO, of a chief digital officer, and the digital team of a bank is to provide channels and platforms for the bank to onboard and manage customers. That is our role. And in that, you have to take, because we're a bank, you have to take on board regulations or compliance, look at the IT capability. Don't try and do things your IT can't deliver, right? So make sure that, you're not spreading yourself too thin by saying, oh, I want to do this, I want to achieve this, but, you don't have the infrastructure. And if you don't have the infrastructure, go outside and get it if it's something the customer really wants. But having everybody on board is very important, because certain things that the digital people, the digital teams understand, not everybody else in the bank does, because their backgrounds are different. They're P&L guys, they're business guys, they're field guys, sales guys. So it's very important to educate not just your customers, but also to educate your colleagues and your stakeholders inside the bank.
Thank you so much. And I think, this is some advice. You also, during the discussion, I remember you mentioned customer centricity. I think that's one takeaway that all, the aspiring CDOs for the future and the CDOs working at different banks can take, as, the outcome of our discussion. Because I think it is the customer centricity that, should shape the technology, should shape the customer experience. So we conclude with that. For our audience, Sharia, thank you so much for your time for this podcast, the third podcast from Hysab Kitab. For our audience, we'll come back again with another interesting podcast with another interesting guest. So, Sharia, thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Yasir.